The ridge at first light. The first shot cracked the silence like a splinter through bone. It came from somewhere above them. High, unseen, echoing down the shale slopes. A split second later, dust kicked up beside Sergeant Daniel Mercer's boot, and the world tilted from quiet gray dawn into chaos. "Contact front," someone shouted, voice already breaking. Mercer didn't think. He dropped, rolled behind a jagged outcrop, and pulled his team down with him. The ridge loomed overhead, a black spine cutting across the paling sky. Somewhere up there, hidden in rock and shadow, the enemy had been waiting. And now the valley had teeth. They had stepped off 2 hours earlier, moving under a sky thick with stars. The mission was simple on paper. Push through the valley, reach the village, meet a local elder who had been feeding intelligence on insurgent movement. Simple. Mercer had been in war in Afghanistan long enough to know that simple was a word that didn't belong here. The mountains had a way of swallowing plans. Still, his team moved with quiet discipline, boots finding rhythm in loose gravel, rifles slung but ready. Private First Class Eli Dawson stayed close behind Mercer, young but steady, his breath visible in the cold. "You ever get used to this?" Dawson had whispered earlier, glancing at the towering dark ridgelines. Mercer didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "You just learn who you trust when it starts." Dawson nodded, gripping his rifle tighter. Now it had started. Gunfire rained from above, sharp, disciplined bursts. Not wild shooting. These men knew what they were doing. 2 o'clock. Mid-slope. Corporal Reyes yelled. Mercer peeked over the rock just long enough to catch a muzzle flash, then snapped back as rounds chewed the stone where his head had been. "Pinned," Reyes muttered. Mercer scanned the terrain. The valley floor offered little cover. The ridge above controlled everything. Whoever held that height held their fate. "We can't stay here," Mercer said. "We move left, use that wash." "That's open ground," Reyes shot back. "So is dying right here." A pause. Then Reyes nodded. "On me," Mercer shouted. They broke cover in a sprint. The world narrowed to pounding boots and snapping gunfire. Dust exploded at their heels. Someone stumbled, Dawson, but Mercer grabbed his vest and dragged him forward. "Keep moving." They dove into the shallow wash, bodies hitting dirt hard. For a moment, the angle shielded them from direct fire. Mercer sucked in air, lungs burning. Sound off. Voices came back, shaken but alive. Except one. "Jackson." Mercer called. No answer. Mercer closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them again. "Reyes, get eyes up. We need a path." Reyes climbed just enough to peek, then dropped back down. "They've got us bracketed. At least 3 shooters. Maybe more." Mercer nodded slowly. The situation was tightening like a vice. And then, quietly, almost lost in the chaos, Dawson spoke. "Sergeant, we're not getting out of this on our own, are we?" Mercer looked at him. There was fear there. Real, honest fear. But something else too. Waiting. Mercer had grown up in a small church in Tennessee. Sunday mornings, wooden pews. His mother's voice singing hymns that lingered longer than the sermons. He hadn't thought about those songs in years. Not until now. Not until the valley pressed in and the ridge above seemed immovable. He exhaled slowly. "No," Mercer said. "Not on our own." He rested his hand briefly on Dawson's shoulder. "But we're not alone." The next minutes stretched thin. Mercer radioed for support, air, artillery, anything. But comms were spotty in the valley. Static answered more than voices. The enemy fire shifted, probing, patient. Waiting for them to make a mistake. Mercer studied the ridge again. There, a narrow path, barely more than a scar in the rock, zigzagging upward along the left side. Steep, exposed. But it led to a position above at least one of the shooters. High risk, only chance. "Reyes," Mercer said quietly. "We're taking the ridge." Reyes blinked. With what? With faith and momentum. Reyes gave a short, humorless laugh. "All right, Sergeant. Lead the way." Before they moved, Mercer bowed his head. It wasn't long. It wasn't polished. "Lord," he whispered, "you see us. You know where we are. Give us courage and guide our steps." Dawson echoed softly, "Amen." Then Mercer stood. Let's go. The climb was brutal. Loose rock shifted under every step. Hands scraped raw against stone. The enemy fire intensified the higher they climbed. Rounds snapping past, ricocheting off the slope. Halfway up, Reyes slipped, caught himself just in time. Don't look down, Mercer called. I wasn't planning on it. They pushed on. Closer now. Mercer could hear voices above, shouted commands in a language he didn't understand. But the urgency was clear. The enemy hadn't expected this. Good. They reached a narrow ledge just below the crest. Mercer held up a fist. Silence. He glanced at Dawson, then Reyes. Ready. Nods. Mercer took a breath and moved. The world exploded again. They surged over the ridge in a controlled rush. Mercer fired first, short, precise bursts. One insurgent dropped. Reyes engaged another. Dawson hesitated for a split second, then fired, steady and true. The fight was close, fast, and then quiet. Mercer scanned the ridge. Clear. Below them, the valley stretched wide, their previous position now a distant scar. The angle had changed everything. Reyes covered the slope, Dawson with me. They repositioned, now the ones holding the high ground. Moments later, the remaining enemy fire faltered, then stopped. Support finally broke through on the radio, distant but clear. Unit, this is Overwatch. We have your position. Hold tight. Mercer let out a long breath. They had made it. Not untouched, not unchanged, but alive. As the sun crested the mountains, light spilled across the ridge, washing the battlefield in gold. Dawson sat beside Mercer, staring out over the valley. I thought we were done, he said quietly. Mercer nodded. So did I. Dawson hesitated. That prayer, you think that's what got us through? Mercer didn't answer immediately. He watched the sunlight push back the shadows. I think, he said slowly, we were given what we needed, when we needed it. Dawson considered that, then nodded. Later, as evacuation teams arrived and the mission shifted to recovery, Mercer took one last look at the ridge. Hours earlier, it had been a place of fear. Now it was something else. A reminder that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to climb anyway. And sometimes it begins with a whisper to God in the dark. Commentary note. This story highlights the power of faith under pressure and the role of prayer in moments when human strength reaches its limit. It reflects the idea that courage is not self-generated alone, but can be sustained through trust in God's presence and guidance. The characters demonstrate brotherhood, sacrifice, and moral resolve, core values often seen in both military service and Christian life. Historical note. The story is a fictionalized account inspired by real conditions and combat dynamics during the war in Afghanistan. Elements such as terrain challenges, communication difficulties, and small unit tactics are grounded in documented experiences of U.S. service members. However, the characters, specific mission, and events are dramatized for narrative purposes and are not based on a single documented battle.